Making the Olympic team just was a whirlwind. And Chris Brown was the coach, and he'd made me the captain, one of the co-captains in the lead up. And he sat me down maybe 2-3 months before the Olympics. And he was like, "You're gonna captain this team at the Olympics." And I knew throughout my career that nothing was set in stone, and I just didn't believe him. Like, he'd already not chosen me into the 12 before, and I was so prepared that that could be the case again. So I just didn't even listen to what he said. Like, I remember the conversation sitting in the cafeteria at the OTC, and I just nod my head like, okay. But the day I got that email, I just went and I sat by the beach. There was a very specific day and time that the roster was gonna come out. I was by myself, and then it popped up with a letter congratulating, naming the team, and it was like a wave of relief, of just pride, gratitude, like humility. And then I FaceTimed Kayla Kinnett, who had also made the team, and we were both just sobbing on the phone. And it's just one of those most like incredible moments of my life that I will never forget. And then I called my parents, and they were so proud, and that's all I ever wanted to do, is just make my family proud. And to be able to say you made an Olympic team is obviously quite an accomplishment, but it still felt surreal until you're actually there, and then it still feels surreal, but it's just literally undescribable. Hey, I'm Abby Gustaitis, and I play for the Headliners.
You've got to look at this lineup. Abby Gustaitis has come back in, and she's got straight into leading.
Line out here for the Headliners. Abby Gustaitis way up to get it. Good ball there.
And the Gustaitis sets up a run. Gustaitis!
I grew up in Norrisville, Maryland, kind of middle of nowhere, off the grid, don't really have a zip code, no lines on the roads, nearest grocery store is like 20 minutes away. Don't even ask my mom to take me to the movies when I was a kid, that was 45 minutes away. I grew up with both my parents, 2 older brothers, so great family, great role models, but off the grid, my high school had drive your tractor to school day. Growing up there was strange, but it was all I knew. And you always had to factor in traveling anywhere, so it was gonna be a long drive. There were maybe 3 houses on my whole entire road, so it wasn't like, oh, go catch up with the neighbors. Like, it was forced fun with my brothers and I, so all of our friends lived nice and far away, so we spent a lot of time together, them mostly beating me up a little bit in the most sisterly, brotherly way. But lots of time to play outside. I think my parents got us home from school and were like, all right, go outside. And we look outside and it's just woods and cornfields and a lot of space. So plenty of trouble was caused, that's for sure. But it was definitely a nice place to grow up. My dad is an entrepreneur. He owns his own business, wallpaper and painting, and my mom works in an urgent care facility as a medical assistant. So I'm actually the first person in my immediate or extended family to go to college. I love school, so I knew that was the path for me, even though I didn't exactly have a role model who had gone through that route. Always had my eyes set on becoming a doctor, and I knew in order to do that, I needed to go get a higher education. Clearly that didn't pan out. I majored in physiology and neurobiology in college, so took all the pre-med requirements, I actually took the MCATs twice just for fun, apparently, it turns out. But was very focused on my studies, was working part-time in an emergency room, really like trying to nail down those application perks for med school, and thought that was the path I was going in. I loved my major, I love science, definitely had a few breakdowns along the way, thinking I was failing biochemistry and organic chemistry, which just like is PTSD, but it's all good now. From my earliest days, I remember holding some sort of ball and playing some sport, chasing my brothers around. They always played baseball, and there was no softball league for me growing up, so I played baseball with my brothers and got picked on a little bit, like their pitcher's a girl, but I loved it. I just thought I was one of the boys too, but basketball was my first love, and I played it throughout high school, was hoping to go play in college, but then just fell out of love with it. But I played everything: lacrosse, baseball, soccer, basketball, field hockey. I think I said lacrosse already. Big Maryland sports, so you gotta say it twice for good measure. It wasn't until I went to college that I actually saw rugby and joined it. I actually just went to a practice. A girl in my dorm invited me, and she actually, I don't think ever even showed up to the training that she invited me to, but I did, and I never looked back. So it's been a great find in my life, and I can't imagine the person I am today without this sport. I didn't even learn of the national team until like 2011, 2012. I'd been playing rugby for maybe a year, almost two. And then one of the older girls on my team got invited to a pathway camp, and it was like this massive deal. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna be an Eagle. This is incredible. And I'm like, what's an Eagle? And it was in 2013, one of the coaches from Naval Academy, she actually approached me after the game and said she was gonna submit my name to be a collegiate All-American, and still had no idea what that even meant, and then learned there was a World Cup in 2014 for the women, and quickly it all turned around. I was like, oh, this is sick. Like, I want to compete against the best. I want to play with the best. I want to travel internationally and play this sport. So my junior and senior year were much more tuned in, switching from the academics a little more to the rugby, and just trying to better myself in any way. For me, there was never a very clear path, and I think that's now what's important to me, is sharpening that path for the next generation, for LA 28 and Olympics and World Cups to come after that. I want young girls to see the outcome and see the goal and have clear direction and have steps along the way, and just setting the pathway. And I think that will just make our national team so much stronger. My senior year of college, 2013, fall semester, so it was like November, I got an email inviting me to, I think it was called an ETC, Eagle Training Camp at that time, and it was at Penn State in the middle of winter, and this was like the last shot to make the 2014 player pool. And I'm still new to rugby. I'd been playing 3 years, but just club, and we didn't always have a coach, so it was very loosely training. But I set my eyes on that camp. I remember driving there, and I was so excited. And then there was this massive blizzard, and it's like below 0 degrees. We're inside some big auditorium, go through this whole day of training, almost throw up in the conditioning, had no idea what I was getting myself into. And the staff were friendly, but shut me down very quickly. Like, you're probably not gonna be an Eagle, and definitely not gonna be going to this World Cup. And I was, all right, well, I gave it a shot. A little disappointed, but march on. So come away from that, kind of sit with the feedback a little bit, ended up getting more feedback from the staff, what to work on if I wanted to pursue higher up rugby, just play more rugby, club rugby after college. And then I ended up competing for the Collegiate All-Americans the following summer after I graduated. And again, it was like just falling short. Like, oh, you make it to the final 30, but you're not going to be in the 23 roster. And I kept getting close and close. And then I found sevens. And it was typically this sport just for the wingers, just for the fastest girls on the pitch. And I was like, that's just not for me. I'm the workhorse in the middle, I can see the field, but I'm a forward, so there just wasn't really a place for me in this sport. And then I fell in love with it. And the space, the finesse, the skill, yes, it's fast, and I still am not fast, but I just loved that challenge and that complete physical exhaustion you feel after a sevens match, just testing yourself. And then I set my eyes on sevens, and it was going to be an Olympic sport. And I met Rick Suggett, who was the head coach at the time, an incredible human being, and he invited me out. And I remember getting that email inviting me to residency, and I was just ecstatic. I can't even put it into words. And I'd been properly training with my Scion coach, and all the girls were super supportive of me on my club team, and it wasn't even a decision. Like, it was just made for me. Like, this is what I'm gonna go do. I abandoned my med school process, my MCATs, everything just went out the window for this opportunity, because I knew I would regret it if I didn't go for it. And so March 2015, I ended up going out and becoming a residency for sevens. And then that was really the start of my national team journey with 15s and sevens, which it took me over a year to even make a sevens stop. There was just trials and tribulations and ups and downs along the way, but every part of it was an incredible learning process and moment. And it brings me a lot of joy to look back on the journey, regardless of where I am now. And just leaves me a little speechless.
I got two choices when I do this: make moves or make excuses.
And the headliners get it back on the hop.
My biggest enemy is me, and even I can't stop me.
Opening ceremony is one of the best nights of my life. Talk about a buzz just yet. First of all, it was 1,000,000 degrees and we're wearing like skin tight jeans, like layers, supposed to be wearing scarves, our polos, like, swag, very cool. You're dressed up with all these incredible athletes, all representing your country. But it was hot, so very sweaty. Other than that, it was just so energetic and nationalistic, like in the best way though. And it's like 2 a.m, and then our manager calls me and is like, hey, do you want to be on the Today Show? And I was like, yeah. And so I go and over to the NBC Sports or whatever it was and doing this virtual interview, and I'm chatting with one of the other athletes, and we're talking about Today Show, and Carson Daly is one of the hosts, and I just remember watching TRL like every day when I would come home. So we're just chatting, and then he gets on the air, and that's the first thing he brings up, and then he randomly knows my high school basketball coach, and it was this surreal, strange, virtual world I'm living in, having this chat with Carson Daly that I obsessed over for years of my youth. And then again, I was just on cloud 9, buzzing from everything, until the next morning when our coach was like, yeah, but you should have been asleep at that time. We have training, this is important. And I was like, don't worry about it, I'll be fine. I was like, it's the Olympics, right? So that was also a very memorable night, and for many reasons, and just being with the girls, walking alongside them, and I think just continuing to get the sport of rugby out there. Like, oh, what sport do you play? And like everyone would amp you up, and everyone was just rallying behind the red, white, and blue, like clearly.
What's the biggest difference between the women's game and the game the men play?
Nothing. Honestly, there are no differences. It's the same size ball, same size pitch, same rules.
Equal play and equal pay. Just part of what separates Premier Rugby Sevens from all other professional sports leagues.
Hearing about Premier Rugby Sevens was such a refreshing take. It was like a release of air, a deep exhale, like anything just like, finally. Literally, finally, men and women are being put on the same even playing field. And as a woman playing sport, it's all you can ask for, right? Like, you can look at other leagues, you hear about other leagues constantly, and you just always have that question, like, why? Why is it separate? Why is it different? And that personally is what drew me into rugby to begin with, is same size field, same size rules, same size pitch. So why wouldn't we get paid the same as well? So that was definitely a alluring factor for me joining Premier Rugby Sevens. And as an ambassador the first year, I was so stoked to promote it and get behind it. And I still am. I've been involved 3 years. I didn't get to play the first year because of an injury I picked up at the Olympics, but I was still there, not repping the pink, unfortunately. But I think as it continues to grow now, we have the 8 teams, the 8 men's, the 8 women's, and continuing to build on that and continuing to show other leagues and sports that it's possible, and this is a formula we should be emulating and seeing across our nation and across the world.